What happens when a country music legend walks onto a morning show set and everything that can go wrong does go wrong? When the cameras are rolling, the lights are blazing, and two massive personalities collide in a way that nobody saw coming. Well, buckle up, because what went down between Faith Hill and Michael Strahan on Good Morning America is the kind of television moment that people will be talking about for years. Before we get into the absolute chaos that unfolded, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below telling me whose side you are on after hearing this whole story. Trust me, you are going to have opinions. So picture this. Faith Hill, one of the most respected voices in country music. A woman who has sold millions of albums, won countless awards, and built a reputation on grace and professionalism, walks onto the Good Morning America set on what should have been a routine promotional appearance. She is there to talk about her new project, smile for the cameras, share some heartwarming anecdotes, and be on her way. Standard stuff for someone of her caliber. Michael Strahan, the former NFL star turned television personality, is sitting across from her with his trademark smile, ready to conduct what everyone assumed would be a friendly, light-hearted interview. The studio audience is settled in. The producers are behind the cameras, nodding along, and everything seems perfectly choreographed for another seamless segment. But from the very first question, something feels off. Michael leans forward with his notes and starts with what he probably thought was a playful icebreaker, asking Faith about her recent decision to take a step back from touring. Now, on paper, that sounds innocent enough, right? Celebrities get asked about their career choices all the time, but the way he phrases it, the tone he uses, there is this subtle implication hanging in the air. He says something along the lines of, "So Faith, a lot of people have been wondering if stepping back from touring means you are winding down your career. Maybe thinking about retirement, taking it easy now?" You can see Faith's expression change immediately. Her smile, which was warm and genuine just seconds before, tightens. Her eyes narrow just a fraction. She is a professional, so she keeps her composure. But anyone paying close attention can tell that question landed wrong. She responds carefully, saying that stepping back from touring is not about winding down anything. It is about being intentional with her time and focusing on projects that truly matter to her. She mentions wanting to spend more time with family, wanting to explore different creative avenues, and making it clear that retirement is not even remotely on her radar. Her voice is polite but firm, and there is an edge to it that was not there moments before. Michael, either not picking up on the shift in energy or choosing to push forward anyway, follows up with another question that somehow manages to dig the hole even deeper. He asks if her husband has been encouraging her to slow down, if maybe he is worried about her keeping up with the demands of the industry. Now, let us pause here for a second, because this is where things start to really go sideways. Faith Hill is not just any artist. She is a woman who has built her entire career on her own terms, who has fought for respect in an industry that has not always been kind to women, especially women who speak their minds. So when Michael frames his question in a way that suggests her decisions might be influenced by her husband's concerns rather than her own choices, you can practically feel the temperature in the studio drop. Faith sits up a little straighter. She takes a breath, and when she speaks, her tone has shifted from polite to pointed. She says something like, "Michael, I appreciate the question, but I think you are missing the point. My decisions about my career have always been my own. I do not need anyone to encourage me to slow down or speed up. I have been doing this for decades, and I think I know what I am capable of." There is no wobble in her voice, no hesitation. She is drawing a line, and she is doing it on live television. The studio gets quiet. You can hear it in the audio. That brief moment where everyone collectively holds their breath because they are realizing this is not going the way anyone expected. Michael, to his credit, tries to course correct. He gives a little laugh, throws his hands up in that disarming way he does, and says he did not mean anything by it. He was just curious about her process. But Faith is not letting him off that easy. She responds with a calm but unmistakable firmness, saying that maybe next time he should be curious about her actual work, instead of making assumptions about why she is making the choices she is making. Okay, so now the tension is undeniable. The producers behind the cameras are probably panicking. The audience is sitting there wide-eyed, and Michael is clearly trying to figure out how to steer this interview back into safe territory. He pivots, asks about her new music, tries to get her talking about the creative process, anything to move past the awkwardness. Faith answers, but her responses are shorter now, more guarded. The warmth that usually radiates from her in interviews is just not there anymore. She is giving him the facts, the details, but none of the personality that makes her such a compelling guest. And then Michael makes what might be the biggest mistake of the entire interview. In an attempt to lighten the mood, he makes a joke. He says something about how country music stars are known for being tough, and clearly Faith is proving that reputation right. He is laughing as he says it, trying to play it off as a compliment, but the way it comes out sounds condescending. It sounds like he is implying she is being difficult, that her pushing back on his questions is somehow proving a stereotype. Rather than her simply standing up for herself, Faith does not laugh. She does not even smile. She looks directly at Michael and says, "I am not being tough, Michael. I am being clear. There is a difference. And if you had done your homework before this interview, maybe we would not be having this conversation." The words hang in the air like a slap. This is not just a guest being annoyed anymore. This is a woman who has had enough, who is calling out what she sees as lazy journalism and disrespectful framing. And she is doing it without raising her voice or losing her cool. She is in complete control, and that somehow makes it even more powerful. Michael's smile falters. He looks down at his notes, clearly flustered, and tries to apologize. He says he did not mean to offend her, that he has tremendous respect for her career. But Faith cuts him off, not rudely, but definitively. She says respect is not just about what you say, it is about how you show up prepared, how you ask questions that actually reflect an understanding of who someone is and what they have accomplished. She is not yelling, she is not being dramatic, but every word is landing with weight. The producers are definitely scrambling at this point. You can imagine them behind the scenes whispering frantically into their headsets, trying to figure out if they should cut to commercial, if they should wrap the segment early, if there is any way to salvage what has become an incredibly uncomfortable situation, but the cameras are still rolling, and Michael has to keep going. He clears his throat, shuffles his papers, and attempts yet another pivot. This time he asks Faith about her influences, about the artists who inspired her when she was starting out. It is the kind of softball question that usually gets celebrities talking in a relaxed, nostalgic way. But Faith is not giving him that easy out. She answers the question, but there is no elaboration, no stories, no laughter. She lists a few names, mentions how important it was to have strong female role models in the industry, and then stops. Just stops talking and looks at him, waiting for the next question. The silence that follows is excruciating. Michael is visibly uncomfortable now, and you can see him trying to figure out what to do with a guest who is completely shut down. The usual rhythm of a morning show interview. He is used to guests who play along, who help carry the conversation, who give him something to work with. Faith is not doing any of that. She is answering exactly what is asked, and nothing more, and the message is clear. She is not going to do the heavy lifting for an interview that started off on the wrong foot and has only gotten worse. Michael tries asking about her fans, about what it means to her to have such a loyal following after all these years. Faith's response is measured. She says her fans mean everything to her, that they have been the constant through every phase of her career, and that she never takes their support for granted. It is a perfectly fine answer, but it is delivered with none of the emotional warmth you would expect when someone talks about their fans. She is giving him the professional response, the PR-approved version, and nothing beyond that. Michael nods along, trying to act like everything is fine, but his body language tells a different story. He is leaning back now, putting physical distance between himself and Faith, and his smile has become strained. Then he makes another attempt at humor. He comments on how serious the conversation has gotten and suggests they lighten things up. He asks Faith if there is anything fun or unexpected she has been doing lately, anything that might surprise her fans. It is such a transparent attempt to shift gears to get her to loosen up and give him something positive to work with. But Faith just looks at him with this expression that is hard to read. It is not quite annoyance, not quite amusement, but somewhere in between. She says, "Well, Michael, I have been spending a lot of time reflecting on the importance of being taken seriously in my work, so I guess that might surprise people who think women in this industry should. Just be grateful for whatever attention they get." The words land like a bomb. She is not even trying to hide her frustration anymore. She is making it explicitly clear that this entire interview has been a problem, that the way Michael has approached her, the assumptions he has made, the questions he has asked, all of it has been rooted in a lack of respect that she is not willing to tolerate. Michael's face goes through about 5 different emotions in the span of 3 seconds: shock, embarrassment, defensiveness, and then a kind of forced neutrality as he tries to figure out how to respond. He starts to say something about how he absolutely takes her seriously, how everyone at Good Morning America respects her immensely. But Faith interrupts him. She says, if that were true, this interview would have gone very differently. She is looking right at him, not blinking, not backing down. The audience is dead silent. Nobody knows where to look. Some of them are staring at Faith, some at Michael, some at the floor. This has gone from an awkward interview to a full-blown confrontation, and it is all happening live. Michael tries one more time to apologize, to explain that he did not intend for any of his questions to come across the way they apparently did. But Faith is not accepting the apology. She says intent does not matter as much as impact, and the impact of this interview has been to make her feel like her choices, her career, and her intelligence are all being questioned by someone who clearly did not take the time to understand who he was interviewing. At this point, one of the producers finally steps in. You can hear someone off camera suggesting they take a break, but Faith is already standing up. She is not making a scene. She is not storming off dramatically, but she is done. She removes her microphone with calm, practiced movements, sets it on the chair, and looks at Michael one last time. She says, I came here in good faith to talk about my work, but I am not going to sit here and be disrespected. I think we are finished. Her voice is steady, dignified, and absolutely final. Michael is sitting there looking stunned, his mouth slightly open like he is trying to find words that just are not coming. The cameras are still rolling as Faith turns and walks off the set. The silence that follows is deafening. Michael looks at the camera, then at the remaining crew, and you can see him trying to process what just happened. He attempts to say something to the audience, something about how they will be right back, but his voice cracks slightly and the words come out jumbled. The segment cuts to commercial, but the damage is done. In the span of less than 10 minutes, what should have been a routine celebrity interview turned into one of the most jaw-dropping moments in morning television history. Faith Hill, one of the most poised and professional artists in the business, walked off the set of Good Morning America after an exchange that left everyone watching wondering what on earth just happened. Now, here is where it gets even more interesting. In the immediate aftermath, while the show is on commercial break, there is chaos behind the scenes. The producers are trying to figure out what to do. Do they address it when they come back from commercial? Do they pretend it did not happen? Do they bring out another guest to fill the time? Michael is sitting at the desk, looking shell-shocked, talking to someone off camera, gesturing with his hands like he is trying to explain himself. Meanwhile, Faith is backstage, and according to people who were there, she is completely calm. She is not yelling. She is not upset in the way you might expect. She is collected, speaking quietly to her team, making it clear that she is leaving the building and she is not coming back. When the show comes back from commercial, Michael is alone at the desk. His co-hosts are conspicuously absent from this segment, and he has to address what just happened. He takes a breath and says something along the lines of, well, that did not go as planned. He tries to make light of it, says that sometimes interviews take unexpected turns, and expresses regret that Faith felt uncomfortable. But here's the thing, his apology, if you can even call it that, is vague. He does not take real responsibility for the questions he asked or the way he framed them. He does not acknowledge that maybe, just maybe, he came into that interview with assumptions and biases that Faith had every right to call out. Instead, he positions it as a misunderstanding, as something that happened rather than something he caused. And that is what makes this whole situation so fascinating. Because this is not just about one bad interview. This is about a larger pattern of how women, especially women of a certain age and stature, are treated in media. Faith Hill did not walk off that set because she is difficult or temperamental. She walked off because she recognized that she was being diminished, that her accomplishments were being overlooked, and that the person interviewing her had not bothered to prepare in a way that honored her career. She made a choice in that moment to prioritize her dignity over playing along with a situation that was fundamentally disrespectful. The questions Michael asked were not overtly hostile, but they were loaded with assumptions. The idea that she might be retiring, the suggestion that her husband might be influencing her decisions, The attempt to frame her pushback as her being tough rather than her being right, all of it added up to an interview that was never really about Faith Hill, the artist. It was about Michael Strahan's preconceived notions of who Faith Hill should be. And when she refused to fit into that box, the whole thing fell apart. What makes this situation even more compelling is how it reveals the double standards that exist in these kinds of media appearances. Think about it for a second. If a male artist, someone with decades of success and a legacy of hit records, sat down for an interview and was asked if he was winding down his career or if his wife was encouraging him to take it easy, people would immediately recognize how patronizing that sounds. But when it happens to a woman, especially a woman in her 40s or 50s, there is this underlying assumption that those questions are fair game, that somehow her choices need to be explained or justified in ways that a man's choices would not. Faith recognized that double standard in real time and refused to participate in it, and that refusal is what made this interview explode the way it did. Michael, for his part, seemed genuinely surprised by her reaction. You could see it on his face. The confusion about why she was pushing back so hard on questions he probably thought were harmless. But that surprise is part of the problem. It shows a lack of awareness about how these questions land, about the assumptions baked into them, about the fact that women in the entertainment industry have been dealing with this kind of treatment for their entire careers. Faith has been in the business long enough to know exactly what was happening, and she was not about to smile and nod her way through it just to make everyone comfortable. She decided in that moment that her self-respect mattered more than keeping the segment running smoothly. And honestly, that is what makes her response so powerful. After Faith left the set, the rest of the show had to continue, but you could feel the energy was completely off. The other segments felt rushed, the hosts seemed distracted, and there was this sense that everyone was just trying to get through to the end of the broadcast. Michael conducted the rest of his interviews that morning, but his usual charisma was noticeably absent. He seemed subdued, maybe even rattled by what had transpired. And you have to imagine that during every commercial break, during every transition, the producers were having intense conversations about how to handle the fallout from what had just happened on live television. The thing about moments like this is that they force everyone watching to pick a side. Some people immediately sided with Faith, praising her for standing up for herself and not tolerating disrespect. They saw her walk off as a necessary and justified response to an interview that was going off the rails. They pointed out that she gave Michael multiple chances to correct course, that she was clear about her boundaries, and that when he continued to miss the mark, she made the decision to remove herself from the situation. These are the people who see Faith as someone who knows her worth and refuses to compromise it, even in a high-pressure live television environment. On the other hand, there were people who thought Faith overreacted. They argued that Michael was just doing his job, asking questions that audiences might be curious about, and that she could have handled her frustration with more grace. They saw her decision to walk off as unprofessional, as making a scene. These are the people who believe that part of being a celebrity is dealing with uncomfortable questions, and that walking off a live show crosses a line, regardless of how the interview was going. But here is what is fascinating about those two perspectives. The people who think Faith overreacted are often the same people who have never been in a position where their intelligence, their choices, and their professional judgment are constantly being second-guessed based on their gender or age. They have never had to sit through interview after interview where the subtext of every question is whether they are still relevant, whether they are making the right decisions, whether someone else is pulling the strings behind the scenes. Faith has dealt with that her entire career, and at a certain point, you reach a limit. You decide that you are not going to participate in your own diminishment anymore. And that is exactly what she did on that Good Morning America set. Michael's questions were not malicious, but they were careless. They revealed a lack of preparation and a reliance on assumptions, rather than actual knowledge about who Faith is and what she has accomplished. When you are interviewing someone of Faith Hill's caliber, someone who has been a trailblazer in her industry, who has navigated decades of change and challenge, you owe them the respect of coming prepared. You owe them questions that reflect an understanding of their work, their choices, and their impact. Michael did not do that, and Faith called him on it in the most direct way possible. She did not yell, she did not insult him, she just refused to continue participating in an interview that was not serving her or her audience well. The dialogue between them was what made this whole situation so riveting. It was not a screaming match. It was not melodramatic. It was two people having fundamentally different experiences of the same conversation. Michael thought he was conducting a normal interview with some playful questions and light banter. Faith was experiencing something entirely different, a series of questions that undermined her agency and reduced her to a set of outdated stereotypes. The gap between those two experiences is where the conflict lived. And watching it unfold in real time was both uncomfortable and oddly fascinating. You could see the exact moment when Faith decided she was done, when she realized that no amount of professional courtesy was going to fix what was happening, and she made the choice to protect her dignity instead. What this moment really highlighted is the importance of preparation and respect in any interview setting, but especially when you are talking to someone who has achieved what Faith Hill has achieved. She did not walk onto that set as a favor to Good Morning America. She came as an accomplished artist with a story to tell about her current work and her future plans. She deserved questions that reflected that reality, and when she did not get them, she exercised her right to leave. That is not being difficult. That is being clear about your boundaries and what you will and will not accept. It is a lesson that every interviewer should take to heart. Because the days of celebrities just smiling through disrespectful questions are over. People are watching, people are paying attention, and more, artists are choosing to stand up for themselves rather than play along with dynamics that do not serve them. The exchange between Faith and Michael will be talked about for a long time. Not because it was loud or dramatic in the traditional sense, but because it was real. It was an unfiltered moment where professionalism gave way to honesty, where a woman decided she had had enough and said so clearly and calmly. It was a masterclass in setting boundaries, in knowing your worth, and in refusing to participate in conversations that diminish you. Michael Strahan learned a hard lesson that day about the importance of preparation and respect. And Faith Hill reminded everyone watching why she has been a force in the music industry for as long as she has. She did not get to where she is by accepting less than she deserves. And she certainly was not going to start on a random Tuesday morning on national television. So now I want to hear from you. Do you think Faith Hill was justified in walking off the set? Or do you think she should have handled it differently? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Hit that subscribe button if you have not already, and let me know what you think about this whole situation. This is the kind of moment that sparks real conversation, so I want to know where you stand.